Mark. He's phenomenal. I do feel grateful that you guys have given me the honor and privilege to share what I'm passionate about. I'm just having fun. I love being here with you guys. Here's excited about week number 3. Cool. So is this too loud for you guys, or is it blowing out any eardrums? And okay, there we go. All right, so we'll go ahead and jump in. And raise your hands if you're learning something so far. First 2 weeks, great. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of do a little bit of a rehash here. And we'll jump right on in. And we're just going to start with, we're going to talk about cancer to begin with. And whenever we talk about cancer, of course, the immune system is intimately involved with cancer growth and development. The immune system is your military, it's your armed forces. And it's critical that the immune system is strong, it's healthy, it's vital, and it's not burdened. So we're going to talk a lot about ways to minimize the burden on the immune system tonight. The immune system is always going to be engaged. There are always things in the environment that are invoking it, or provoking it, causing it to come out and defend you. The immune system is always on its toes. However, the problem occurs with cancer and other diseases we'll be talking about is when there's a burden on the immune system, when it's just being crushed by those 3 T's. Who remembers what the 3 T's are? Toxins, traumas, and stinking thinking, right? And thoughts. So we'll go ahead and jump in, and we're going to talk quite a bit about that, but we have to understand, just starting with cancer, you know, way back when, in the Nixon era, President Nixon declared war on cancer. And for all of these years, literally hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent on cancer research, and really the needle has not been moved much. So this statement was made, and I'll read a lot of this because I know many of you guys can't see it from where you're at, but the New England Journal of Medicine said, the most promising approach to the control of cancer is a national commitment to prevention. What is that word again? Prevention. The best way to deal with cancer is what? Just not get it. That's the best cure. You know, that's the best strategy. Not always the strategy you can go to, but that's really the best place to start. So here's the model. We know that, yes, there are genetic tendencies to grow cancer. That's known as your genotype, what you're given by your mother and father. And there are tendencies toward cancer. There are genetic markers toward cancer growth, or that kind of create a predilection or a predisposition toward the growth and development of cancer. However, there's also something called phenotype, or how you live your life, the lifestyle influences on the expression of genes. Does that make sense? So you have the hardware, then there's the expression of the genes, kind of the software. So we know, according to pretty much every scientific journal out there, all the research that's been done, that environment exerts a 90 to 95% effect on how the genes are going to be expressed. 5 to 10%, it's just going to express itself. The person's just going to get cancer. There's nothing that they necessarily can do. They can't really do much about it. But over here, it's showing you that there's quite a bit you can do to take control of your health, not to be victimized. And so breaking that pie out here, you come down here that a big chunk of it is what? Diet, certainly alcohol. Okay, me personally, I'm not necessarily a big fan of that because there's all these studies that come out, have a little bit of red wine, have this, have that, or the other thing. You know, there's a new report every week coming out about alcohol, either the benefits or the detriments of it, right? Isn't that confusing? Wine, this or that. But overall, you know, they're actually putting it in this column as something that could definitely stir the growth of cancer. And then, of course, tobacco, infections, obesity, being overweight. Next week, we're going to be talking about weight loss, the negative effects of obesity, and then how do you really rev up the metabolism? How to get your body into a fat-burning mode? Who here is interested in learning about that? Okay, it's a great topic. We got some great information for you, and let's finish like champs. Next week is week 4, and we're going to finish strong. But you see right here, this one column right here is other. It's a little hard to see. It's really small, actually. I'm having trouble seeing it from here myself, but it says other, about 10 to 15%. What is that other? What's that? Correct, right? Everything other than what's there, right? That's a good answer. What's that? The foods we eat, maybe the chemicals in the foods we eat, the foods we eat, right? That's what we're gonna talk about quite a bit tonight. Maybe chemicals, toxins, right? Environmental toxins. The EPA says, the Environmental Protection Agency says there are well over 100,000 toxins in the food, air, water that we drink, eat, and breathe. So pesticides, fertilizers, genetically modified, I mean, it just goes on and on. Fluoride in the water, there are a million different toxins. And it's not just one that's going to, create the growth and development of cancer, but these toxins get laid on. How about amalgam fillings? Amalgam fillings they're not silver fillings. They're actually more like mercury fillings because it's over 50% mercury. Is mercury good for our bodies or bad? It's bad, right? So if we have a mouthful of those, not to panic, okay, because many of us have had it or do have it. Every time you have a hot beverage, there's a little bit that leaks in the body. So there's just a vast amount of toxicity that can be placed in that category. Medications as well. Can medications be toxic? They can be life-saving, but over time they can become very toxic and spur forth the growth and development of disease, suppress the immune system, allow cancer to develop, all these other things. So we know that, again, according to all medical scientific research, that environment trumps the genes. How we live our life, our lifestyle influences have much greater effect than just being victims of something that's totally out of control in terms of genetics. 95%, according to the University of Columbia School of Public Health, 95% of all cancer is due to interference diet and the accumulation of what? Toxins. So we're going to have a discussion about that as we go forth. Just as a review, many of you guys remember this from the first week. We really spoke quite a bit about it. Last week we touched on it again, revisited it, but we talked about the Swiss watch principle. And we talked about the 3 T's, traumas, thoughts, toxins, and how they are triggers. They can be triggers or stressors that create what? Inflammation. Does anybody remember that word? Inflammation. So that's really the foundation of it all. And if the body doesn't have what it needs, if it's deficient, and then it's being triggered or stressed by one of those 3 T's, that sets up an environment for the growth and development of cancer and other diseases, which we'll be talking about tonight. So remember, we go back to this concept that the nerve system is running everything. Many of you guys have already had your spines and nerve systems checked. Dr. Joe, walking in here, I got a lot of great feedback about just the process that they went through. Many of you having your spine checked, having your nerve system checked, and really gaining that understanding, how great of an experience it was for you. And many of you guys are actually beginning to care for that system with Dr. Joe. So again, this is at the core of it, the hub of it, and then going around you have the digestive system, the skeletal system, the skin or integumentary system. These are the 9 systems of the human body. You have the skeletal system, the muscular system, the breathing, the lungs, the respiratory system, the circular, the cardiovascular system, the digestive, hormonal system, the endocrine system, the immune system. So let's go ahead and keep moving. And we know what? We know that every one of these systems affects one another. One system does not work by itself. It's important that we do have medical specialists, yes? But if you have a medical specialist working on you and they're only looking at your liver, can they be missing the full picture? The full scope, yes, right? So that's why we look at, again, thankfully there are not 900 systems of the human body, there are 9. And we can really turn over stones quickly, clinically, we really can figure out which one's the big rock or which are the big rocks that are really jamming up the system, not guessing, but testing the nerve system, testing the hormones. We can test the gut. 80% of the immune system is inside of the gut. So we can do an allergy, food allergy test, a stool test to look at the microbiome, the bacterial balance in the gut. There are different things we can look at. Last week we talked about the cardiovascular panel, the cardiometabolic panel, looking at the arteries, looking at the inflammatory markers in the body. So there are ways to look at all of these different systems by way of a consultation. We have that extensive questionnaire that we do. There's a way to really understand how these are all working together and then figure out which system needs to be tested first and which is the biggest needle that needs to be moved first. And of course, with cancer, you want to make sure that the burden is as small as possible on the immune system. So we're going to go ahead and keep moving. We talk about this in regards to cancer. We always start what's going on for years and years and years, the 90% of the iceberg you can or you can't see. Too much light, you can't see it. Oh, he wants the lights dimmed. Okay, so we know this, that trauma, toxins, thoughts trigger stressors. They're creating inflammation, these triggers and stressors. They're burdening the immune system. And again, this is all going on for years and years. Can someone be growing and developing cancer for 10, 20, 30 years with no symptoms? Is that possible? Absolutely. And not know it, not feel it? Of course, happens all the time. There are people that I've come across, I've crossed paths with in my life, in my extended family. They said they felt great, they looked great. They were active individuals living life. They go to the doctor, they get checked, they're told they have liver cancer, and 6 weeks later, they're gone. Has anybody ever heard a story like that before? It happens all the time. So again, these things can grow silently. Cancer formation, tumor formation, growth and spreading, metastasis. And again, it's all starting here. Here's where the process is beginning. And then 10, 20, 30 years later, maybe a symptom would kick off. And these symptoms up here would typically spur on a person to go to the doctor to get checked, to get evaluated. Once you have these symptoms, whether it's fatigue, tiredness, swallowing problems or hoarseness, wheezing or shortness of breath, frequent fevers or infections, could that be a sign that the immune system is being burdened? Absolutely. Unexplained weight loss, bowel problems, changes in the fingernails, unusually painful periods or bleeding between periods, weakness and fatigue. This is a gigantic one. Because if the immune system is burdened and you got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of imbalance, it's going to be diverting, it's going to be taking a lot of energy away and reallocating it toward dealing with the imbalance. So you're going to get really tired and fatigued, red, sore, or swollen breasts, nipple changes, testicular swelling or lumps, nipple discharge, pain or burning during urination. So these are very prominent signs, signals, warnings that something is not right. There's massive ecological imbalance. But where did it begin? Are the symptoms the first thing to show up or the last? The last, right? But many times when we go to doctors, the doctors will look at these symptoms and they'll do what? Right? They're the firemen, the fire people. Okay, these are the people that come in to put the fires out. And many times they're not addressing the symptoms. Now, is it possible that they do find the tumor and maybe they cut it out in time? They cut out the tumor, they irradiate chemotherapy, whatever it may be. That's the decision that that person and the doctor have made medically. They pull the tumor out. That procedure or process could have been life-saving. But still, even at that, they take the tumor out of the body. But they've done nothing to change what's going on under the surface, to either remove the burden from the immune system or to deal with the trigger stressors in the form of traumas, toxins, and thoughts, tested for those, identified what's the source, the root source or cause of the inflammation. What will happen more than likely to that person's body? They will regrow what? They will regrow the cancer cells. Again, not to say that maybe even cutting the cancer out could have been life-saving. It could have been. Maybe not, maybe yes. However, the same environment that existed that allowed for the growth and development and proliferation of that cancer still remains. Does that make sense? The same imbalance still remains. The same triggers still remain. The same inflammatory process is still smoldering and kindling underneath the surface. Does that make sense? So we're getting somewhere with this. I just kind of want to lay the foundation and build up from here. But this is a very, very important picture, visual to get. So again, we started and we've been talking about this. This thread has been woven through all of the weeks. As a common theme, we know that the nerve system is controlling everything. The nerve fibers, this is Dr. David Felton, he's a PhD researcher, medical doctor, and he actually researched the nerve system in relation to the immune system. So you have the brain controlling what? What does the brain control through the spine? It controls what? It controls everything, right? Now, in particular, as we're discussing the immune system, your immune system doesn't just work on its own. The brain controls all of the immune tissue, not some of it, but all of it. So what do you have is the first line of defense, which I had part of ripped out of me when I was a child, tonsils, adenoids. So that's immune tissue right there. Then you have the lymph glands behind the head and down the neck, lymph vessels, spleen, bone marrow. You have these different components that I'm going to show you on the next slide of the immune system. And of course, you have the thymus producing T cells, the T lymphocytes, producing white blood cells. That's what these glands do. So what Dr. David Felton and pretty much any scientific textbook and medical textbook would tell you is that all of these immune glands that are out there, they're all run by the brain nerve system. And what he showed and what he said is nerve fibers go into virtually every organ of the human immune system. We found that if you took the nerves away from the spleen or lymph nodes, you virtually stopped immune response in its tracks. So the immune system is not working on its own accord. It actually has a regulatory system known as the what? Nerve system. And that nerve system is running through the spine. That's why that's the first order of business. That's the major cog in that Swiss watch model that we use. And so every person has, and this is important right here, number 2, every person has cancer cells in the body. Cancer cells do not show up in the standard test until they have multiplied to a few what? A few billion. This is going to sound like a weird statement, but guess what? We are all cancer survivors. All of us. You want to know why? Every one of our bodies today made anywhere between 2,000 and 10,000 cancer cells. Did everybody here know that? That we all make cancer cells every single day. Now, the thing that determines whether you have a net positive accumulation or net negative gain or net positive gain at the end of the day is your immune system. Is your immune system able to effectively clear out these cells? Is your immune system able to effectively get rid of the defective cells, the cancer cells, and rebuild or regenerate and grow new cells to outpace the bad defective ones? Does that make sense? So every day, if you have a net negative gain, then you are a cancer survivor. Okay, you're moving forward. Your body's dealing with the cancer effectively. If your immune system is weak and suppressed or overburdened, these cells will have an opportunity to accumulate. And that's the thing, and you'll see it on the slide coming up, that cancer really is a disease of accumulation. That is essential in the understanding of cancer. And the way it accumulates is when the immune system is burdened, it can't do its job. It's distracted. It's overwhelmed with simple tasks or overwhelmed with other things that are taxing it while the cancer is accumulating in the body. Raise your hands if this makes sense so far. Good? Okay, so what this showed again, moving on, when the doctor tells you that there's no cancer in the body, it just means the tests are unable to detect the cancer cells because they have not yet reached a detectable size. If the immune system weakens too much, that's when cancer can establish itself. Doesn't that feel empowering in a way to know that, yes, cancer is a disease of accumulation, but if the immune system is working well, it can deal with it effectively in many cases, and there are ways to alleviate that burden on the immune system that we're going to cover tonight. Doesn't that feel empowering? That in many ways we can take control of our health and our health destiny. So let me go ahead and keep moving. And again, this is one of the tests that we do at the office, the thermal scan. If you get a spinal evaluation, which is definitely a major, if not the major piece of immune strength, then one of the things that we do is we do a scan. We want to look for areas like the red, the color are areas of interference of the brain not being able to flow that river of electrical life out to the body. The vertebral subluxation, or the bones out of alignment, irritating, inflaming the nerves. Those areas of inflamed nerves, damaged, weakened nerves, and those nerves cannot communicate effectively maybe to the spleen, to the tonsils, adenoids up here, maybe to the thymus in that area, maybe to the lymph nodes in the groin, different areas that need that nerve supply. So very important to know. So moving on. This is another way that we actually measure, I think I've shown this before, but this is another way that we actually measure the stressors on the nerve system, and it actually shows us to a very great degree how much inflammation or how much stress is going on inside of that nerve system. It's called the heart rate variability. It's a powerful test. It's somewhat, I guess you can call unique, because most doctors don't use it. But it's very powerful in the information you can get from the body. Now, this test is being used in a lot of cancer research. And here's why. Again, the brain's communicating with the body. Interestingly, the way God has set up the human body anatomically, neuroanatomically, is the brain communicates with the body by way of a gas pedal. The yellow nerves are a gas pedal, and the green nerves are the brake. So the yellow nerves are the what? Gas pedal, and the green nerves are the brake, right? So the brain actually has this way of, both systems need to be working well, brake and gas pedal. There needs to be a balance. And the heart rate variability, what this test is measuring the balance between what's called sympathetic, fight or flight, the gas pedal, and parasympathetic, which is feed or breed, and that's the green. So you have the gas pedal and the brake. And what we do is we do this simple test for 5 minutes. Many of you guys have actually already had it. 3 minutes, your fingers are on here, and it's registering how the neurological conduction transmission is occurring primarily between the brain and the heart, back and forth. And that's giving us a really good indicator regarding the total burden that the nerve system is under. So ideally what we want to see show up is that square in the midline. It means that there's a good balance between gas, pedal, and brake. And what they're showing in the Journal of Neurophysiology 2015 and a lot of other journals which are focused on cancer research, they are using heart rate variability, and they showed in not only this journal, many others, that heart rate variability dictates cancer burden. If the heart rate variability is low, it should be here ideally, but the most important thing that we want to see is it balance first, and then the higher up you are, the stronger your nerve system is. But what they showed here is heart rate variability dictates cancer burden. That's defined in different ways, but all kind of come back to, in a research population, if someone has cancer, the cancer burden is, if it's higher, then typically the cancer progresses faster, and they have a much greater chance of dying from the cancer. So they use that terminology in that respect. And what they showed here again is if heart rate variability is low, then it's a worse outcome for that person. If it's high, if it's in the midline and higher, then there was a better outcome. The person's cancer grew slower, more slowly, and they had a less likelihood of dying from that cancer. And again, what this comes back to, the heart rate variability, is simply measuring balance. It's measuring the effect of inflammation or the stressors and triggers, the amount of stress that that nerve system is under. And why is that important to measure? Because the nerve system is running what? It's running everything, right? And it's running all the time. It never rests. It's running everything all the time. And so that's what we measure. That's one of the ways that we look at the body, one of the ways that we look at the nerve system, because again, it's running everything. Now, again, just to briefly touch upon this again, I mentioned this a moment ago, the organs of the immune system. And we're going to jump into this. We're going to jump into foods, food allergies, how foods can affect the immune system, create a burden on the immune system. So you're just looking at these, again, tonsils and adenoids, one of the first lines of defense. You rip them out, you got a problem. That was kind of faddish when I was growing up. When I was a little kid in the mid-'70s, the doctor said, hey, this is swollen. Mrs. Yachter, your son not only needs those glands out, but he needs them out on this visit. So my mom said, okay, well, he's all yours. Hit me up with some anesthesia. Next thing I knew, I was waking up, and I had these suckers ripped out of my throat. But think of this for a moment. These are literally crucial immune tissues here, and tonsils and adenoids, pretty much the first thing they do, they're like sentinels. They're like sentinel glands, meaning that they kind of are watching things coming in. They're distinguishing what's coming out the body and trying to figure out how to deal with them. Should we launch B cells, T cells? Like, which white blood cells should we do? Like, what do we launch? Do we launch the tanks, the helicopters, the jets? Do we just put the the infantry out? They're trying to figure out like who to deploy. Does that make sense? Just to kind of keep it simple as an analogy. And then you have the thymus. This is thought to basically produce T cells, T killer cells that go after cancer cells. Lymph nodes, they are the spleen, filters the blood. It helps distribute white blood cells. The appendix, Peyer's patches are in the small intestines. They're these kind of antibiotic traps. And then the Peyer's patches, or the appendix, is in the large intestines. And that's, again, another like antibiotic or antiseptic place. It's like a filter that, again, both the small and large intestines have these big immune gland centers. And so that's why, if you've ever heard this about the microbiome, raise your hands if you've ever heard that word microbiome, or that 80% of the immune system is in the gut. Has anybody ever heard that? Okay? And that's why we're going to be spending a good amount of time in the gut, right? So there's so much immune activity that's going on there that if there's a burden there, It drains mass resources away from the immune system, diverts attention and focus from what the immune system really should be doing, which is kind of controlling the accumulation of cancer cells at the end of the day. Does that make sense? So we're going to talk about that extensively. These things cannot be overburdened, and if they are, it's going to create a massive immune system stress and strain. Bone marrow, you got B cells that are produced there. You have white blood cells that are produced in the lymphatic glands, lymphatic nodes, and then also are deployed from there as well. That's why, again, if you've ever felt, you've had like an infection, viral, bacterial, what happens is the glands swell up in the neck, the back of the head, because these are like lobster traps. Stuff comes in and they swell up to trap what's there. They deploy white blood cells, and the phagocytes start coming out and start kind of, the Pac-Men start chomping away at whatever's there to get rid of it. And then that's what I'm going to show you next. So don't let this overwhelm you. There's a little bit of detail. There's a kind of a busy graphic there, but I'll explain to you what's going on because this is going to be important in relation to how the immune system reacts. There's a splinter. There's a splinter coming into, that splinter is coming into the skin. Everybody with me? So that's coming in, and basically what happens is, here's the blood vessel. So you got your skin, and you got the vessels running directly underneath the skin, and the splinter comes in. The splinter comes in, and it actually pierces the skin, and in the skin are little like histamine molecules, and that's what you have here. Histamine, these little nodules here, these little kind of look like pebbles along the way. These are little histamine nodules, and they're released. And why is histamine released? When an intruder knocks on the door, a splinter, maybe it's a bee sting, maybe it's a snake bite. What happens is histamine opens up the blood vessels and allows white blood cells to leak out into that area to, like, again, these Pac-Man. Anybody here remember the video game Pac-Man, right? Okay, so with these Pac-Man, they come out, and these, what are known as phagocytes, white blood cells, they start chomping away at the pathogen, whatever it may be. Viral, bacterial, whatever got in, and whatever the immune system thinks is a threat, it goes after that. The histamine opens up the vessel, it vasodilates, allows the white blood cells to come out, and then once that happens, you have the platelets that come and then kind of form a clot, and then that clot eventually forms into what? A scab, right? So that's the process in general. Now, the problem is with histamine, for example, if a wasp lands on your eye and stings you, what happens to your eye? It swells up, right? Doesn't feel good. There's pain, there's redness, there's swelling, there's edema, there's fluid. Okay, you fall down, smash your knee, same process. Mechanical, chemical injury, whatever it may be. The immune system reacts pretty much the same. It doesn't really calibrate much. It's not that great at calibrating or kind of tempering its response. It just basically pulls the trigger and asks questions later. That's pretty much what it does. So whether it's a pathogen, whether it's a splinter, whether it's bacterial, fungal, viral, or food, medication, whatever it may be, your immune system just goes ballistic. It hits the, what I call DEFCON 5, the nuclear warhead button, and just goes after it full force. That's the inflammatory scenario right there. Does that make sense? So that's really important as we go forth and also talk a lot about food allergies, because one man's food is another man's poison, as Hippocrates said many, many years ago. So we could talk about foods, which ones to eat, and which foods can support the immune system. Vitamin D is essential for the immune system as well. We know that. You can find that in different areas, along with sun exposure. You can get it in eggs and liver, and different places. You can find it in mushrooms. There are different foods. There's things like CoQ10. There are things like cruciferous vegetables that are really important to support the immune system. There are things like fish oils, omega oils. These are really, really important, very supportive. Curcumin, very important, anti-inflammatory. Now, the problem, though, is this. Okay, eggs, great for one person, but can they be a trigger, an inflammatory trigger? When they come in, the immune system thinks it's a pathogen, an enemy, a splinter, or a sting, or a snake bite. Your immune system may perceive that egg, that nut, that almond, that walnut, that shrimp, that shellfish as being what? As being an enemy, triggering an immune response, closing your throat up, sending you into anaphylactic reaction response mode, going to the hospital, almost dying from that food. Is that possible? Yes. No problem for the other person to eat shrimp. There's a lot of great benefits in shrimp. Very, very healthy food. There's things you can find in shrimp that you can't really get in other places, but not necessarily good for the person whose store closes up, or eggs or almonds or other foods or dairy or things of that nature. So we really want to hone in on, yes, there are like a lot of healthy selections. We can talk about healthy foods, but we really want to get into what can a food allergy, if it's the wrong food for you, what it can do to your immune system, the burden that it can place on you and your immune system, the suppressive force that it can be on your immune system year after year after year, not only making you sick, but allowing cancer to accumulate in the body. Are you guys with me? Does this make sense? All right, so I wanted to put this up as just showing you that whether it's a splinter, whether it's a virus, bacterial infection, whether it's whatever, your immune system is looking at, again, even foods in this respect, setting and launching this response that creates swelling, inflammation, redness, edema, fluid collection. Now, when it happens on the outside, it's a little easier to see. What happens when it's happening internally? In an organ, in the blood system. Do you think it's a little harder to detect as it's growing? Absolutely. How about in the gut? Is anybody here ever heard of leaky gut? All right. So that's a process gradually. Ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, diverticulitis, reflux, all of these things. That's that process right there happening in the gut. And that happens over years and years and years and years of these inflammatory hits, of these splinters hitting, and then eventually it tips over. The barrel gets full enough, as I always say, in that analogy of the water just starts spilling over. Does that make sense? So moving on, we always say, again, what this is showing here, just to make it simple, I like these little analogies. If you want to be well, you have to fix the cell. If you want to be well, you have to fix the what? Cell. But in order to fix the cell, when the fish is sick or the cell's moving around here in this inflammatory environment right here, you have all that stuff going on, kind of like the splinter coming in. This is all the immune stuff. There's waste, there's toxic sludge, there's white blood cells, there's debris, there's collateral stuff flying everywhere from the immune system launching an attack in the bloodstream. This can be from, this is congestion and inflammation from too much processed food, sugar, and food allergies. So again, if you want to be well, you have to fix the cell. However, the fish or the cell can only get well by changing the what? The water or the environment. You got to change the environment. You got to change the ecological balance of that environment. Does that make sense? So again, getting that cell into a cleaner environment where there's less inflammatory reactions. And by the way, it has a lot less to do with what you should look for in the Whole Foods food aisle, like what healthy foods are popular this week. It has a lot more to do with removing interference, removing the insults, removing the foods that your immune system is reacting to. Health and healing has a lot more, or nutrition has a lot more to do with removing the interference than adding or trying to go to your local grocery store and because you saw like goji berries on Dr. Oz, he's talking about some exotic fruit hanging in the Amazon somewhere, you're like, I need that. And if I don't get that, I'm going to grow cancer. It has a lot less to do with that, even though it's not a bad thing to look for healthier options. Again, it has a lot more to do with removing the interference. Because God already created your body smart. He needs no help to heal us. He just needs no interference. That's the key. Definitely to cancer growth and development or prevention and also health expression. It's removing as much interference as possible to what your body already knows how to do. We're built in his likeness and his image. He doesn't make junk. He didn't make mistakes. He created walking, healing machines, miracles. Amen? Cool. Okay, good. All right, so, a little bit of preaching there. So change the environment in which the fish or cell or cancer is trying to live. Cancer is an ecosystem. It needs this system. It needs the immune system to be taxed, a decoy, so it can do its deal. It could do its thing over here. The best way to alter it is to change the entire environment rather than targeting an isolated variable or gene. Does that make sense? So I, again, use this analogy, metaphors, analogies. I like using these to show you what's going on. You have the soldiers in the foxhole, and they're getting ready to get out, get on the field, and start fighting, right? This is what they're doing. Now, you have a dump truck that comes along, dumps 10 feet of garbage on the foxhole. Are those soldiers getting out to fight the war? They're now going to be utilizing all of their energy To get what? To get through the garbage, to get out, to deal with that new problem right there, to get out of the foxhole. So again, white flour, white sugar, processed foods, we already know the chemically enhanced food, artificial flavorings, all that stuff. We can go on and on, right? Raise your hands if we already kind of knew what the bad things are, right? I mean, we know what they are, right? So again, in general, the high level stuff, yes, certainly eating cleaner. But again, we're going to spend a little bit of time on the gut and food allergies and how critical it is to understand which foods are right for you and which foods are not right for you. Because it's not this universal, global, ubiquitous thing that we have, here are all the foods that everybody needs. Everybody needs to eat avocados every day. I love avocados, but what happens if I have a severe food sensitivity or allergy to avocados? Is it a good food for me? Probably not. It's burdening my immune system. Now, there's a way to actually correct those, to actually rebalance the immune system so it doesn't react to these foods. After a while, we actually work with our patients. We show them how to go through that process and not having to leave foods out forever. But if the immune system is reacting to certain things, it needs a break. So again, all of these things cause immune system interference, suppression, and burden. What's that word? Burden. That's the theme of tonight. Whether it's cancer or any of these other diseases, you need a healthy immune system. And if it's being burdened, it can't do what it's supposed to do naturally. It can't function properly. It can't, again, flush a net negative gain or cumulative effect at the end of the day. It can't flush those cancer cells out of the body. So again, cancer is a dis-ease of what? What's that word? Accumulation. That is key. That is crucial. And by the way, why do we have that hyphen there? It's deceiving you. Dis-ease. Because the body built by God, is designed to be at ease, homeostasis, equilibrium, balance, right? And the hyphen denotes a temporary scenario, not a life sentence, disease, but a temporary scenario where the body's tipped out of balance, and the hyphen represents the interference, and it's up to a doctor of cause, DC, doctor of chiropractic, doctor of cause, are looking at the whole. A doctor could look at everything and figure out where are the big rocks, where the interference is, and when you remove those, again, the body's smart. Only the body can heal itself. Only the body can mend, cure, heal itself. Once it's removed, the body is smart and knows how to bring itself back to ecological balance. Does that make sense? Right? So it's giving more hope to a patient rather than putting a label on them and making them think that, wow, there's something defective with me, there's something genetically wrong, I just have to live with this. This person in my family had this person had it, I guess I was just destined to have it. So that's what that denotes. It's a hyphen of hope. That's what that denotes, hope. So localized cancers, ones that do not spread to other parts of the body, they rarely kill. Did anybody here know that? That it's not really the localized cancers that are the problem. It's the ones that spread. So what you have here is cancer kills because of metastasis, the spread of cancer throughout other parts of the body. Now, I'm not here to tell you necessarily that, for example, biopsies, okay? Sometimes they have to go in, they have to figure out what's going on there, okay? And it could be a very positive thing. It could also be a very negative thing because what happens is the body also has a unique ability to encapsulate cancer as it's growing, and to try to protect innately, adapt, and protect the surrounding areas. And many times when there's a biopsy, you go in, you get tissue, and that can be important to find out, ascertain as to what's going on in the body, but it can also do what? It can also do what? It can cause it to spread, right? It could break it open. So I'm not saying that, I'm not going to weigh in necessarily on the biopsy, whether it's right or wrong. That's per individual person and what their decisions are. But many times, the problem is if it does spread it, that's what can be a major, major issue, or maybe it's spread on its own. Cancers do that as well. At the time of diagnosis, 76% of lung cancers have already spread. 55% of colorectal cancers, 37% of breast cancers. So that's why we're talking about cause. We're talking about removing as much burden off the immune system now, being proactive, preventive, because it's really hard to make good healthcare decisions when you have a gun to your head, right? When you already have the stuff, it's spread, you got your back against the wall. That's not a good place to be. It's not a fun place to be. Would you agree? So that's why we're talking prevention. That's why you guys are, we're spending 4 weeks together so we can learn, grow, and become empowered and get equipped so we can really make decisions that are going to benefit our health, our bodies, and our life. So as we age, our bodies can become more what? So it goes back to cancer is a disease of accumulation. As we age, our bodies can become more inflamed. The more chronic the inflammation, the more smog, toxicity. Go back in your mind and get that graphic or that image of the what coming into the skin. That splinter, right? And then that reaction, that inflammatory reaction, creating not only inflammation, but imagine that's an acute scenario. It happens and it's over with. But imagine chronically, maybe that's going off every day or multiple times per day, maybe in the gut, maybe because of foods. Yeah, there's inflammation. It's going to eventually cause a lot of smog, a lot of toxicity, a lot of waste, a lot of dead cellular material, debris, things of that nature. There's a lot of collateral damage when these grenades are going off, these inflammatory immune grenades. Does that make sense? So you got a lot of debris, stuff going on in there, smog, like I showed you with the cells. So the more chronic the inflammation, the accumulation of these things, the greater the risk of what? Cancer. Again, 5%. Maximum 10% genetic expression out of your control. But again, all science, medicine, biblical wisdom and knowledge also confirms that again, a lot of it is within our control to a very great degree. So again, going in through this is the food allergy panel, and this is one of our go-to tests. I always say, this is a great place to get quick wins real fast out of the gates, to see what very clearly by testing the blood, what is really creating massive drag on the immune system. You can see it. It's a very accurate test. You can see what your body's not doing well with, whether it's a healthy food or not. A lot of people get these and they're like, I don't know why I feel so bad. I eat the healthiest diet I know of anybody. I don't do this, I don't do that, I eat this. They come up to me and they're like, but I feel horrible. And then we test them, all the things that they think were health foods and they're eating are showing up on their food allergy testing. Now, let me go ahead and explain this for a moment, how this works. So again, above here, these red foods, which you can't see, all these red foods that come back, those are foods that your immune system, every time you eat, is reacting to aggressively, like either a splinter, viral bacterial pathogen attack, medication, or a bee sting, or what have you, or a snake bite, like we talked about earlier. Are you guys with me? So that's what happens now. All the foods down here that were also tested, the lab takes your blood and tests these foods against it to see what type of reaction. All the foods below that mark are foods that are okay. Now, these foods are not provoking an immune response or any forceful reaction. However, they can become allergies, food allergies or sensitivities, if you do not rotate those foods enough. Again, as we mentioned last week, in yesteryear, small farming communities, country was rural, and people were eating foods as the crops rotated. Foods were not eaten perennially all year long and never given a rest. They were given a rest. They just had access to whatever was being grown and rotated crop-wise. Does that make sense? Biologically, that's just how God's built our bodies. But again, through the industrial age and everything that's come about because of that, packaging, shipping, preserving, freezers, refrigeration, all that, we have access to, again, most people what? They eat the same things what? Every day, right? We're almost all of us are creatures of habit, especially when it comes to eating foods, right? So what happens is over time, the immune system can react to certain foods. And it's different for everybody per their physiology, per their genetics, per the immune system comes from our mothers. And if our mother also had food allergies, they're also passed along. We inherit them from our mothers. Also, people come back and say, oh, that makes sense. I eat these foods all the time. Or some people say, I never have those foods. I never eat them. Two scenarios. Again, one, it could have been inherited. And that's why we recommend children get tested early on to see what's going on so they can, the health can be protected in an early age. But the other thing that happens is many of these ingredients or many of those foods can be put in as lesser ingredients in many of the foods that are being eaten. If you're not paying attention to the labels, they're getting snuck in as other ingredients and things of that nature, maybe saddle dressings or different condiments that you're putting into your body daily. And so that can happen as well. Many people, when they hear the word food allergy, they think anaphylactic reaction. Throat closes up, they go to the hospital. However, there are different levels of food allergies. The other ones, IgE, throat closes up, you're in trouble. Shrimp, dairy, corn, things like that, eggs, those are the more common ones. So this does IgE testing. Most people already know if there's an IgE reaction, but it tests it anyway. But then there are lesser, which are known as food sensitivity, still food allergies, but those are more like IgG. You don't necessarily have to know that. I just wanted to show you there's a difference, although they're all food allergies. These right here, your throat, these are the IgG. When you eat them, your throat doesn't close up. You don't need an ambulance. However, there's a delay. So it doesn't happen immediately, but a day or two later, again, like we've talked about, you wake up and you feel like you were hit by a bus. You don't feel good. You don't feel right. You feel off. You can't put your finger on it. You wake up, man, your joints hurt you, and that day you'd be like, man, I'm just getting old. Your brain is foggy. You can't remember things. You don't feel good. Maybe you feel like you're punched in the gut. I mean, your stomach's hurting you. You have cramps. Whatever the case may be. Just add, migraines. You just can't put your finger on it. And this is a gigantic culprit for many, many people who have been suffering for many, many years. So that's what these are. Now, what we do to calm the immune system, these are placing a huge, huge burden on the immune system, and I'm going to show you exactly why on the next slide. So every time they come in, again, the immune system launches an assault, and it's like a decoy. It's being taxed. The immune system's always being taxed on some level, but it's being overly taxed, and sometimes multiple times per day. There are people who walk around all day and eat just almonds all day long, and they have a very, very high level food allergy to almonds. So their body's constantly taking these immune system, snake bite, bee sting hits. What we do here is we rotate these out. We retest about every 3 to 6 months. We rotate them out for 6 months, preferably up to a year. And we have ways, because we know during that year, they're going to get either voluntarily or involuntarily snuck back in, and there are ways to actually quell those reactions. The longer you have them out, the more in tune you'll be with when they come back in. You go out to a restaurant, you tell the waiter, waitress, can't put these in my food. You wake up the next day, you're like, I know exactly what caused this. You start figuring it out, and it creates an awareness. So after about a year, you bring these things, you rotate them back in, and when you bring them back in, you start rotating them. And that gives the immune system a chance to calm down or relax so it doesn't have that forceful reaction to those. And many of these, what they do is they just start dropping off, and we see them showing up on this list right here. Is this making sense so far? Good. So what you're looking at right here is the leaky gut illustration. Raise your hands again if you've heard of leaky gut. Okay, so that's a problem after a while. So imagine this right here, the carpet. This is kind of the lining of the intestines, the small intestines. Again, 80% of the immune system is in the gut. So if you have these foods coming in and they're food allergies and your immune system just firing away, it fires away inside of the gut. This is the lining of the gut, the carpet. After a while, if I have a blowtorch and I'm just hitting this carpet, eventually it's going to lose its structural integrity. There's going to be holes. It's going to be maybe loosened. That's what happens inside of the gut. This is where the food, and I'll give you an example here. Just think of your digestive tract as one long tube. It's actually outside of your body, not inside of your body. It goes from mouth to anus, and the way the food gets in your body, it is actually absorbed. The particles are absorbed through the intestinal lining. So this is kind of the shag carpet right here, and you're bringing, say, whatever it may be. These are pathogens, virus, bacteria, different things like that. But think of this like the foods are coming through here. They're passing through the mouth, coming down this way. And when the immune system detects it, it fires off. It tries to blowtorch these things. It goes after them with an inflammatory reaction. And after a while, as months and years go on, it starts weakening these junctions. They should be very tight. Now they become what? They become leaky. They open up, they lose their structure, integrity, or tightness. Does that make sense? So as they're losing their tightness, now what happens is these foods now start getting through. So you're not only having the inflammatory reaction here, now they start getting through, and this is the blood vessel. So the only things that are supposed to be getting through here into the bloodstream are microparticles of glucose, protein, amino acids, the fatty acids, once they're broken down, and then they're brought into the body. But now, when this becomes leaky, what gets in? What gets in there? Pretty much everything. Things that should not be getting in there. Now, watch this, guys. For those of you guys especially who have autoimmune diseases or have been diagnosed with autoimmune diseases, now this stuff starts leaking into the circulation. So this is the bloodstream right here. And when it gets in, now your immune system really gets angry. It gets upset, and it starts really trying to do everything it can. It hits the DEFCON 5, nuclear missile button, and it starts really aggressively going after the stuff with everything it's got. So now what you have is, number one, you have nutrient malabsorption. Now your body's not absorbing things. You have leaky gut. Food intolerances. So every time you go to eat that food, there's a flare-up. Again, maybe celiac, Crohn's, diverticulitis. There's an immune reaction in that area. Maybe just indigestion, the initial stages, you have something of a lesser digestive issue. You have blood-brain barrier. So 80% of the immune system is in the gut. And this area has direct communication with the brain. It's going to affect the moods. That can lead to serotonin issues. 80% of the serotonin, which is the major hormone, neurotransmitter in your brain to keep your brain level and a sense of well-being, 80% of it is produced right here in the gut. So what's going to happen to your moods? If you have food allergies, what happens to the mood? Some moodiness, some moods. It can affect depression. Your entire mental outlook in life is affected by your gut. And now you have systemic inflammation. So now you have this inflammatory process going throughout your circulatory system systemically. And as the months and years go on, your immune system is waging war. And eventually, as we mentioned week 1, the soldiers get what? Battle fatigued. And as they get worn out, as the resources start diminishing, vitamin B, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin A, D, K, all these vitamins and minerals are just getting churned and burned because the immune system requires an enormous amount of diesel fuel. That army needs diesel fuel. Minerals, vitamins, it needs resources, CoQ10, it needs all lipoic acid, glutathione, it needs all these resources and raw materials. And man, all that stuff just starts getting depleted little by little by little because your army's always fighting. So the army gets a little weakened, it gets confused, the immune system is burdened, depleted, deficient, and in that state, it gets confused, and when it gets confused, it says, what is that? Is that a pathogen? Is that a virus, bacteria? Is that a food? Or is that the skin? I don't know. I'm just going to attack it. So it starts attacking the skin. Autoimmune condition. When the immune system gets confused and starts attacking you, it starts attacking the skin, psoriasis, eczema. I don't know, it looks like a food, it looks like a virus, it looks like a thyroid. I'm not really sure. I'll just go ahead and blast at it. Now it's blasting your thyroid. Autoimmune diseases of the thyroid, Hashimoto's, Graves, hypothyroidism. It's not a thyroid issue, it's an immune system problem. I'm not really sure what that looks like. Maybe food, virus, bacteria, maybe it's the nerve system. I don't know, I'm just going to attack it. Multiple sclerosis starts attacking the nerve tissue. So the body, the immune system starts doing wacky things when it's been burdened for a long time. Raise your hands if this is making sense, yes? Okay, so this is just this is pure physiology. This is just pure neurology, pure Swiss watch principle. So everything is affecting everything. But again, the worst part about it is now the whole system is affected. It's not just a gut issue, it's a brain issue, it's a body issue, it's a bone issue. Every single part of the body, another autoimmune disease, lupus, that's another rheumatoid arthritis in the joints. The immune system starts attacking the joints, the skin, the connective tissue. Can cause migraines, headaches, all these different things. So again, there it is again, leaky gut progression. What can do it? Not only food, what else? What do they call the end? The three what? The three what? The 3 T's. You got stress, stinking thinking, right? We need to get into the Word every day. Because if the Word's not getting in, then what's getting in? Stinking thinking. That's it. You got to put on the full armor. Not only our bodies, our minds, our spirits, put it on. Because that can rip up the gut. Because those stressful thoughts left uncontrolled are flooding your system with cortisol, adrenaline, epinephrine, all the stress hormones. You know what they do? Stress hormones do a lot of bad things to the gut. They make it very permeable. So what you're seeing here, again, just a couple of last slides, and we're going to finish up, is you got drugs can do it, can make it leaky. gut, foods, all these different things can cause GI inflammation that make it leaky, that open up the shag carpet and allow these things to get through that shouldn't get through. And the main reason they get through is because the inflammation is busting up or causing the loss of mucosal integrity right there. All these things get through. You develop food intolerances, immune system burden, and autoimmune issues if left uncontrolled and uncorrected. Does that make sense? Going back to our good friend, the hormone cascade. So now what you have is, just to point out that thyroid, people have thyroid problems. What I have discovered clinically, it's typically not, most people come in and they're talking about their thyroid as an issue, and it typically is not primarily a thyroid issue. One of the things that happens, because gut problems are so prevalent, a huge amount of active thyroid hormone is made in the gut. Did anybody here know that? So you have thyroid hormone in the form of inactive thyroid hormone T4, but then T4 is converted in the liver, in the gut, in the adrenals a little bit, to the active form of thyroid hormone, which was T3. So if your gut is messed up and there's an inflammatory response in there, is your gut really effectively making thyroid hormone? Yes or no? Nope. So guess what? In order to initiate this or continue this cascade, to convert cholesterol to pregnenolone. You guys remember this from the weeks past, yes? So pregnenolone is the master hormone. These are all of the sex hormones of the body. Testosterone, estrogen, all these over here, the progesterone, the estrogen, the testosterone, aldosterone, all of these hormones made primarily in the adrenals. In order for that cascade from LDL cholesterol, bad cholesterol, in order to convert into pregnenolone and then convert into all of these hormones, you need T3, active hormone. And if your gut is imbalanced, you can't make the T3. It doesn't matter how much levothyroxine, Synthroid they put you on. It's not going to balance. There's always going to be a what? An imbalance. Does that make sense? So now, gut issues now can lead to, if your estrogen is off, you could have some big problems. It can cause infertility issues, progesterone being off. If that's off and a woman's trying to get pregnant, that can cause miscarriages, okay? Estrogen, infertility issues, testosterone, that could lead to a lot of issues as well. It can cause fatigue in men and women. So you have all of these issues. If the cortisol is off, all these hormones are going to go imbalanced. Cortisol is off, pain can be elevated, blood sugar can go out of control. Do you guys see how all these things are connected? How we bring all the cogs back? But with one test, with that food allergy test, you can actually see what's going on in the gut. And by removing these things and a few nutritional strategies here and there, you can restore balance quickly. And by restoring balance to the gut, remove a huge burden off the immune system. Let the immune system protect you on a much higher level, including from cancer, and let your whole body work at ease. Does that make sense? So the gut it's really a huge boulder, a big needle mover when we identify these things and start working on them, again, along with getting the nerve system healthy as well. So again, pregnenolone, by the way, if that doesn't convert here, pregnenolone is critical for brain function. That could lead to depression. If these hormones, again, estrogen, the different estrogens are off, and again, we have the hormone panel, the Dutch test. If that's a really big concern for you and you want to dive deep in your hormones, that's a really, really powerful test. It's the most comprehensive test that exists in science and in medicine today. The Dutch test not only looks at these hormones, but it looks at the intermediate steps of them and really tries to identify what's going on in your individual body. If a woman, for example, has hot flashes, night sweats, fatigue, libido issues, depression, all of those typical postmenopausal things, the doctor does what? With 100 women who have those symptoms, what do? They all what? They all get pretty much the same thing. They'll get a treatment, standard treatment. However, the reason they have those symptoms could be different for each one of those women or men. Does that make sense? And by getting a comprehensive, a complete hormonal panel, which the Dutch test is, it shows you where the problem is in the stream. Where is the damming of that river? Where is the boulder blocking things up? So again, all of these things, the estrogen, wherever there's a blockage, that's where the problem can show up. If there's an estrogen issue, that can cause weight problems, progesterone and estrogen. And a lot of women, a lot of men go through that. If that's off, Weight gain can be happening, and we're going to talk a lot about that next week. Definitely plug into that. It's the most powerful technology that exists for getting weight off the body quickly at any age, and no matter what, male or female or age. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that next week. So again, there's the panel right there. You guys were given last week that panel, that menu, and I think you guys already know the fees if you want to do that. We keep our costs for the labs. We had someone come in this morning. They were like, my doctor wanted for me to do this lab like $500 or $1,000. Ours is $250 or $225. I forgot the exact number. You guys have the menu. So whatever it says on the menu, I have these numbers flying around in my head. I don't know, but whatever it is on there. So if you wanted to do that, you could talk to Teresa. That comes, that takes about a week or two to come back. I do want to make a correction to one of the things that's on the menu. It said $40 for the spinal exam. There's no charge for that, so if you've already come to the office, we'll recredit you for that, okay? That was a mistake. So just to know, there's no charge. If you haven't done that exam, the spinal evaluation, there's no charge for that, and there's no charge for the body composition analysis, which is the weight loss component, right? So Teresa can set the time for a body composition analysis, if that's what you're already thinking, weight loss-wise. For fat loss, it looks at fat percentage, body water percentage, visceral fat rating, metabolic age, very useful test. There's no charge for that, and we have 4 different offices that you can do that at, depending upon where you're located. The main one is in DeBerry. If you want to do the spinal nerve system evaluation, no charge for that either. I know it says $40 there, but that was a mistake. That should have been at no charge. And if you've already had it, again, like I said, you'll be recredited for that. You let us know, let Teresa know, or let Dr. Joe know. So if you want the spinal nerve system evaluation, talk to Dr. Joe. For the body composition analysis or the food allergy testing, let Teresa know. And I have a feeling there are a lot of people who have already talked to me or expressed interest regarding the food allergy test. That is a great first test if you're looking to do one. Some folks say, no, I want to do the hormone panel, or I want to do the cardiometabolic panel. I already know what my needs are. But if you're looking for something that can really, again, move the needle quickly, identify things that are just knocking the legs out of your immune system and your physiology daily, and could be a really quick, big win for you, that's probably the best test to begin with. Again, primarily just to remove and release this burden off your body, off your immune system, so your body can simply reallocate energy to other areas of the body that need it, rather than continuing to be in this war against these foods or pathogens that are coming into the body. So, top immune system supporting strategies. You guys learned those tonight. By the way, you glad you came tonight? Did you guys learn anything? Good stuff? Fantastic. The last week, week 4, is going to be phenomenal. I'm going to tie it all together, but again, I'm going to show you guys how to really accelerate the metabolic speed, the fat burning capacity of your body, hormones, and we're just going to tie it all up together. But basically what we talked about tonight, identified food allergies, hampering or burdening the immune system. That's a big one because, again, 80% of the immune system is in the gut. And whether it's cancer prevention or any of these other things, you have to protect the gut. Whether the issue is pain, infertility, cancer, depression, all of these different issues have so much to do, really everything to do with the immune function. And again, going back to the gut, 80% of it being in the gut. And by the way, the other test that we do, we always start, if we're looking at the gut, with the food allergy test. Some people, there's such an issue there. The other thing we do is we not only look at the upper GI, but the lower GI, the colon area. We have a stool test. It's a 3-day collection, and we actually get a big report back, and it looks at the entire microbiome or ecological balance of your entire gut. So that's something we do downstream. If someone really has some advanced issues going on, we combine that with the food allergy test. That can really show us a lot, especially if there are concerns with parasitic infections, advanced viral, bacterial things. There's tremendous inflammation. That's another test that we introduce with the gut testing. And then, of course, what's the last one there, guys? Keep that nerve system clear, because it's controlling what? It's controlling everything, including the immune function of the human body. So get checked. It's available for you. You're not, just because you're attending these classes or workshops, you're not obligated to get checked. I'm just excited to give you the information. and sitting here week after week after week, I pray that it's empowering you and equipping you with phenomenal knowledge, information, education. And if that's all it is, then great. For those of you guys who do want to take advantage of the opportunities to get tested, to get evaluated, do so, because I know it could potentially add massive value to your life and your health. So I'm excited about just being here and then also helping beyond here the folks who want that help. I think there was a question over here. Yes. PPIs? The proton pumps, the inhibitor pumps. Maybe as, again, the fireman and the carpenter analogy, we always go back to that, right, with any drugs. And after a while, what's going to happen is that you need a very low pH, high acid environment for food to be broken down. And part of the problem is as we age, our stomachs become less acidic. So I know this sounds weird or paradoxical because you like take Tums to reduce the acid, right? But the very thing that's actually causing acid reflux is not enough acid, because your stomach is not acidic enough breaking down the food, so it's repeating on you, so it's too much alkalinity. Isn't that ironic, right? So the drugs initially will lower the amount of acid or raise the pH, which is really what you don't want. But so temporarily, maybe, I'm not sure, as an emergency scenario was the fireman analogy, but long term, it really can have a very detrimental effect. Also, the stomach acid, you want your stomach to be as acidic as possible. In fact, the stomach acid could go down to like 1 to 2 pH, which if you pour that on this floor, it'll eat right through. It'll go right through the concrete, that level of pH, that low or that acidic. But your stomach is, that's how miraculously we're created. God has just designed the stomach to have barriers to resist it going through. But the reason it needs to be so low or so acidic is to not only break up proteins in foods, but also to destroy pathogens as they're coming in. Bacteria, viruses, and things like that. So the drugs which raise the pH or lower the acidic level long-term can be beneficial or very damaging. What do you think? Very damaging, right? So, great question. Yes, sir. Again, fireman and carpenter analogy. So the thing is that's a personal decision in terms of taking antibiotics or not. But long-term, what's happening is it really is, physiologically, it's carpet bombing the whole entire body. And when you take an antibiotic, whether it's life-saving or not, it can be. Right. So probiotics is a good idea if you have had an antibiotic. Because an antibiotic, again, antibiotics have to do with the gut and keeping balance. Antibiotics throw it off. Probiotics are a great idea. I do recommend probiotics to bring balance back to the gut. So there's several strategies we use botanically, herbally, supplement-wise, probiotic-wise, to bring into the gut to regain balance. Because like many people like myself, I've had probably 150 rounds of antibiotics during the course of my life. So bringing probiotics in is a really good way to reestablish gut floral balance, really important. So sorry about that. I didn't. Yeah.
When you showed the picture of the body in the beginning, and you talked about the tonsils, the adenoids, the other one.
Peyer's patches, the appendix.
First thing that a doctor wants to take out on you.
You asked me why?
Well, you told me they were the areas that, like, suffered. They saw when a problem was coming, and they're all there for a reason, yet the doctors take them out.
Yeah. Give you the mic. Well, if you have an appendix burst because it's infected and, something like that, like an emergency situation, it can be life-saving, right? But it became standard practice. So it's kind of like, if the splinter, medicine looks at that process as a bad thing, and they want to stop it. They want to give a drug to stop it, bring it down, cut it out, what have you. Not always the best idea. Yeah, it is. It's a really strange concept, isn't it? When you look at really see how the body's set up, it's like, man, if you can avoid it, why not avoid ripping those things out, right? Because my tonsils and adenoids were swollen constantly when I was a kid. So the pediatrician just said to my mom, well, we got the solution. Just rip those suckers out. We won't have a problem with them anymore, right? Rip them out. They're like weeds. Just rip them out, Well, there was a problem. There was a reason. There was a cause as to why they were always swollen. Maybe because I was eating a mass quantity of sugar. I was just, I had a very unhealthy lifestyle. I lived in a very unhealthy house. We didn't know anything about foods or nutrition. I remember growing up, I had a Kentucky Fried Chicken box, 20-piece meal box on my kitchen table for dinner at least 3 days per week. And then Burger King maybe once, and then McDonald's once, and that's how we ate, right? I mean, so every possible thing that could swell those lobster traps, swell them up. Does that make sense, right? So medicine just works that way, right? Yes.
Which test should I take? I take about 30 or 40 probiotics and vitamins a day. Which test would show if it's doing good? Which ones are doing good? Which ones are bad?
There are a lot of, so the question was taking 30 to 40 different vitamins, probiotics, different types of things. Chances, I mean, I don't take anywhere near that myself, and I'm a health nut. So, I mean, chances are there could be a lot of, I'm not sure what you need or don't need. I mean, that would be a combination of a consult, and in terms of a test, there's a lot of different directions you can go in, but I would just start with, again, many times getting healthy and stay healthy has less to do with what you're adding and more to do with what you're removing. Does that make sense? Right? So a lot of things you can be, like sometimes maybe a natural doctor gave you an anti-inflammatory, natural plant-based anti-inflammatory, it's curcumin. But really the thing that's creating the inflammation are the food allergies over here. If you remove those, that'll bring the inflammation down faster than a supplement. But again, it's per person. Maybe it's a balance. You know, it's striking a balance and trying to figure out really what exactly do you need, don't need. Food allergy testing, it's a great test.
So you'd be able to tell me what I can eliminate?
I could. I mean, I could definitely work with you on that, for sure. Yep. Great questions, yes. There are different panels. The one we use is 154. Yep. Yes.
I had gastric bypass, so I had a good portion of my gut removed, and I find that I can't absorb a lot of things. Is there a way to overcome that?
Yeah, that's a little tricky, right? So there are, certainly liquid nutrition. It's going to be easier on your body breaking it down because you have less surface area for digestion. So and vitamins as well. When you take vitamins, less capsules, more liquids, herbals, more on the liquid side. So your body has a much easier time. And also like sublinguals, things that don't require your gut. There are certain liquids that you can bring in that are just absorbed through the buccal membrane, through different portals that don't really require that digestive process. So there are directions you can go there.
That's good. How about patches?
How about what?
The new patches?
And patches too. I mean, there are transport systems like that as well for medication and supplements. Yep. Yes, sir.
Well, kind of following up on supplemental, if you are taking medicines for say, diabetes, and you now find out that you are taking a particular metformin that depletes B12, so it makes it deficient, but you're taking a vitamin that actually brings B12 back in. Are we going to be able to find out what the balance is as far as how much of this can we take? Because we don't want to overdo something to try to
Absolutely. You can do individual markers. Look at the B12 markers. Those are literally individual tests. There are panels that you can look at, the different B complexes that are, the Bs that are involved with the complex. So yeah, I would monitor that for sure. I do that myself. I look, because I take Bs and I want to know what's going on in my body. There's some people who have a genetic marker that doesn't let them break down Bs properly, B9, B12, and if that's the case, they go too high. Some people, they're not absorbing it, so it's a good thing to get tested, absolutely. And you can just test individual Bs if you want. That's another, yes?
Can you have an inflamed immune system or gut and not know it?
Absolutely, you can. You can have it for years and years and years. And then eventually when you have symptoms, that typically, that's kind of the latter stages of it. But you can have a lot of things going on internally. You can have those splinters going off, those inflammatory reactions for quite a while before the tip of the iceberg is revealed in the way of symptoms. Yep. That's why it's a good idea. That's why, like I mentioned last week, as soon as I can, as soon as my 6-year-old, you guys already know this, I have a 6-year-old, 3-year-old, and 1-year-old. As soon as my 6-year-old, I can get her near a needle, I'm going to do a blood draw. I'm going to do this panel right here because I want to know, because if she's doing it now, it may not hurt. She can show up at 29 years old and have ulcerative colitis. And when did it start? A lot earlier. The food allergy one, yeah. And if the person really is suspecting there's even something deeper than that, then we do food allergy with the stool. So it looks at the entire gut, ecology and environment. Yep. Fantastic, guys. Again, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Talk to Dr. Joe or Teresa if you want one of those appointments. And I'll be back next week. Bring guests with you. Let's fill up the stadium here for the grand finale. And God bless you, and God bless this mighty man of God right here, Pastor Mark. We're thankful for him. So, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, let's stand together, everyone, if we can. And I really appreciate the questions and answers. That's how we get the wisdom that we need for our specific area. Please make sure if you need to talk to Dr. Yachter privately, you can come by and say something to him now and ask him questions, or come early next week as well. So again, I thank you so much. You can also get these slides as well as hear the full teaching on if you go on YouTube, then you would search the Sanctuary Online, and you can find his outlines and also his teaching recorded there. Also, we have, I think we have some CDs available. Are we making CDs or not? I don't know. On Sundays, CDs are available. Oh, not for Wednesday nights? Is that what you're saying? They'll be ready on Sunday. So we are making CDs for these that are ready on Sunday. You also, if you have our church app, you can get the slides and also his teaching on our church app if you have that on your phone. If you don't have that, you can download the church app as well. So we want you to share these things with as many people as you feel led to share them, rehearse them. Sometimes a lot of information, right? So we have to maybe listen to it again and look at some of those slides where we can read some of those things that are on the slides and see what great wisdom is on those slides that we can't read. So again, all this we're trying to make available to resource you. Again, nothing surpasses, though, God in your life, as Dr. Yachter has pointed to, and that'll change the toxins of the thought life for sure once you have the renewing of the Word of God and His promises. Let's just give Him our health. Let's pray. Let's ask God to touch us with wisdom. May we be open-minded to receive it. Search out the things we don't really know. And may God lead us in steps we take to walk in the health that He ordained us to walk in. Amen. Our Father, we thank you so much for tonight and Dr. Yachter. We thank you for staff that's here. Lord, our own Teresa Keller that also assists. Lord, we just thank you for the wisdom that you have given to him. And we just ask you to take that wisdom that he's imparted, and may the Holy Spirit give energy in our hearts and minds of those things that we are to act upon. All of it's good, Father. But Lord, I know that by your Spirit, you would touch us and certain things would impact us that we need to change our lifestyle or our diet or things we need to investigate. Lord, may we act on the nudges of the Holy Spirit tonight. And all through these sessions, may we act on those promptings that you've given to us while we've listened and while we are contemplating. And Lord, as we do that and follow the leading of your Spirit, you will lead us into greater wellness and health. Thank you, Father, for that wisdom, which is better than the weapons of war. And we pray now that you would put your blessing upon us as we depart. Lord, may you keep us and may you watch over us and bless us and lift up your countenance upon us and give us grace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you. Have a great night. Come by and see Dr. Yachter.